test, test.
سمير
سامي
سمير كتسمعني؟
خليك انا برا باش نسمع
واخا
الدنيا ليك ديال وي امين تيست تيست
تيست سمير تيست
مونطون
ميكرو ميكرو
اه وي سا مارش
ça marche توب
وي سا مارش
الو سمير
collaboration will promote research, training programs, and events around the topic of diversity and inclusion, not only to encourage dialogue around the topic, but also to bring together the community and build a strong foundation and a network of professionals in the public and the private sector to come together around the topic, share ideas and opportunities, and move the needle forward together and as one community. This evening, we're going to talk about the topic of women breaking through the glass ceiling, but not as the traditional term that we're used to. We're used to women breaking through the glass ceiling in the corporate world, women climbing up the corporate ladder. But tonight, we're focusing on this on a much broader term and a much societal view. We really believe that in order for society to succeed, that the role of women leadership is the key to break through the glass ceiling to achieve diversity, inclusion, and social impact. Diversity and inclusion initiatives are more important today than ever before. We are facing some of the most pressing challenges of our time, from environmental and economic challenges and crises, the lack of health care, from no access to education, and more importantly, women are not only affected the most by these issues and challenges, but recent history and data show that women are the key to providing ideas and solutions to these exact challenges. We as women leaders play a critical role in building stronger economies and healthier societies. Most recently, just in the last couple of years, we have noticed and we have seen that the countries that have fared the best during the pandemic were led by women. We have an abundance of data and research evidence that really demonstrates that companies that have women in the C-suite level and sit on the board perform better. And it goes without saying that the numbers show that the countries that women play an essential role in countries' economic growth and development. But this is just the beginning, and we have a long road ahead of us. And that's what brings us here tonight. So tonight, we'll be hearing from both presidents of the universities, Al Akhawain University and Africa Business School at the University of Mohammed VI Polytechnique. We'll be hearing from Mrs. Najat Valou Belkacem giving her keynote speech, from Amandla Uko-Ombaka from McKinsey giving her presentation about the power of parity. And we're going to have a great discussion with female leaders coming from various industries who have served and worked in different parts of the world, but have one big thing in common, and that is leading with awareness and intentionalities as female influencers and doers in their communities. So thank you all so much for coming and celebrating with us this big collaboration between two big academic institutions. And without further ado, I'm going to welcome Mr. Hisham Al-Habti, who's going to be joining us remotely. And Mr. Hisham Al-Habti is the president of the University of Mohammed VI Polytechnique. Thank you so much.
Monsieur le Président.
Oui, c'est bon?
Oui.
On est bon?
Oui.
Ok, très bien. C'est bon, vous arrivez à me voir?
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Oui, c'est bon? Donc je peux commencer?
Oui.
Très bien. Merci beaucoup. Je commence par juste souhaiter la bienvenue à tout le monde, cher président Amin Ben Saïd, chère Madame Najat Valou Belkacem, mesdames et messieurs, chers invités. Je tiens tout d'abord à m'excuser de ne pas pouvoir être parmi vous ce soir pour des imprévus. Cela n'empêche que j'ai tenu à être parmi vous et démontrer mon soutien à cette initiative. Au nom de l'Université Mohammed VI Polytechnique, j'ai l'honneur d'inaugurer cette édition de l'événement Women Breaking Through the Glass Ceiling, qui est organisé avec nos confrères et amis de l'Université Al Akhawain. J'ai la certitude que ce panel sera pour nous tous l'opportunité de discuter, partager et débattre ouvertement autour d'un thème majeur, non seulement en entreprise, mais aussi et surtout en société. Comme vous le savez, à travers le monde, l'égalité des genres et l'autonomisation des femmes sont des sujets de plaidoyer par excellence dans la sphère publique, suscitant ainsi des passions, craintes et espérances pour bon nombre de sociétés. Durant des décennies, le premier obstacle à cette autonomisation fut la reconnaissance même que les femmes méritaient les mêmes droits que les hommes. Pas plus tôt que 1995, Hillary Clinton déclarait à Pékin "Human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights once and for all", suscitant un tollé d'applaudissements tellement la déclaration était perçue comme révolutionnaire à l'époque. Près de 3 décennies plus tard, on peut dire que cette idée s'est plus ou moins normalisée dans l'esprit de l'opinion publique contemporaine, grâce en grande partie au sacrifice des mouvements de défense des droits de la femme. Les femmes s'imposent dans leurs études, en entreprise et dans la prise de décision dans plusieurs sphères. Mais dire que les discriminations systémiques de genre n'existent plus serait bien évidemment faux. Les avancées dans l'égalité hommes-femmes se font à vitesse multiple à travers le globe, dépendant de la région en question. Malgré des progrès encourageants, notre continent africain fait malheureusement partie des régions où ce changement sociétal se fait assez lentement. L'UNESCO estime que pas plus de 40% des jeunes filles en Afrique arrivent à finir le collège. Pour celles qui arrivent au lycée, le taux de diplomation est de 47% seulement. Ceci fait de l'Afrique la seule région du monde où les femmes sont moins nombreuses que les hommes à obtenir un diplôme d'enseignement supérieur. Au-delà de l'injustice morale d'une telle situation, c'est aussi le manque à gagner pour ces sociétés qui inquiètent les experts en développement. En effet, toutes les études internationales s'accordent sur le fait que l'égalité des genres en société est un catalyseur de croissance économique et de prospérité. En tant qu'institution académique, l'Université Mohammed VI Polytechnique a le privilège d'appartenir à un pays engagé dans l'autonomisation des femmes qui contribue chaque jour à son développement. Grâce au leadership visionnaire de Sa Majesté, le Maroc a pu instaurer des réformes institutionnelles comme la Moudawana, la réforme du Code de la famille, qui restaure la place de la femme comme citoyenne à part entière. Il nous incombe à tous maintenant d'accompagner cette vision par une mobilisation égalitaire sur le terrain, surtout dans les régions rurales où le manque de scolarisation des filles reste encore un problème. Tout comme nos partenaires de l'Université Al-Akhawayn, notre rôle à l'UM6P en tant qu'éducateur est primordial dans la promotion du leadership féminin. L'université est d'abord et avant tout un lieu mandaté pour former et équiper les citoyens de demain. À cet égard, nous sommes à l'UM6P fiers d'accueillir une population estudiantine à 54% féminine. Aux côtés de leurs confrères de la jeune masculine, ces jeunes filles investissent des domaines d'études, de recherche et d'innovation connus traditionnellement pour être le terrain exclusif des hommes. L'informatique, les sciences de l'agriculture, la robotique, l'intelligence artificielle, la data science ou les sciences politiques. Mais notre responsabilité en tant qu'incubateur sociétal va bien au-delà du transfert des compétences. L'UM6P veille diligemment à implémenter les valeurs d'égalité, de solidarité et de respect susceptibles de catalyser une société future qui encourage le leadership féminin. Le harcèlement et la discrimination sont non seulement strictement réprimés dans nos campus, mais leur signification est surtout bien clarifiée et débattue à travers des campagnes ouvertes de sensibilisation telles que Say No to Violence. L'engagement communautaire découlant de ce safe space porte déjà ses fruits. 88% de nos étudiants estiment que leur université promeut activement le leadership féminin. Je ne peux conclure cette allocution sans saluer les panélistes ici présents pour leur leadership. Votre succès inspire et continuera d'inspirer les générations futures sur la possibilité et la nécessité même d'avoir des femmes leaders autour de toute table. Merci de votre attention et bon séminaire.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Merci.
Mr. Amin bin Said, the president of Al-Akhawayn University, welcome to the stage.
bonsoir, good evening, masa al-khair. Madame la ministre, Monsieur le Président, Si Hicham al-Habti, chers collègues, chers invités. In our complementarity, maybe I will go ahead and do this in English. And if you allow me, I'd like to start by expressing some thanks, some heartfelt thanks, first to our partners at the Africa Business School at University Mohammed VI Polytechnique and the university itself, but certainly to the AUI team. I understand that you have spent months working very closely together, and we're extremely happy about this. We are very happy to be in a process of intimate partnership with UM6P, really for a strong Morocco, working at our level, whatever we can do, and there is quite a bit we can do. But certainly we are convinced we cannot have a strong Morocco without doing something about women. And so I'm very happy to be here this evening for this. And in all sincerity, for my part, I'm here more as actually maybe with two hats. One hat is a student of women empowerment, because I have been led to humility about this, and I keep learning every day. And the other hat is really a substitute, as a male substitute for a female leader. Dr. El-Gar has been leading this effort on the part of AUI, and she had to be in Dubai, and she has had the generosity of choosing the dates where I could be present and she could not be present. So it tells you a little bit about women's generosity as well. Now, from an AUI perspective, I can't think of women, I can't think of anything without thinking about our students and alumni. And so our first pride really is through our alumni. And some of our most successful alumni are female, whether it's at the IBM J. Watson Lab in New York, or whether it's at Johns Hopkins in Washington, D.C., or whether it is in Morocco at the CEO of Toyota Morocco is an AUI alum, or many CMOs, chief marketing officers, or chief human officers, beaucoup de DRH et en marketing, who are typically number two in companies. And many of our 9% of entrepreneurs among our alumni are also female. So we like to think, academics like to think that they have something to do with it. so we'll take a little bit of the credit for that. But AUI has done a few things on the one hand, and has just some indicators. I think Si Hicham on the one hand and Fatem Zahra, whom I'm very happy to meet today, have given some statistics which are there and that speak for themselves. There are some statistics at AUI as well. So at AUI we have 53% of students who are women, quite close to UM6P. But even more importantly, 2/3 of the AUI students who are on the president's list, the best performers, 2/3 are women, are female students. And similarly, 69%, so more than 2/3 are on the honors list at AUI. So clearly something is happening with respect to quality, academic quality at least. In the last few years, even the percentage of female students in engineering has been increasing at AUI. Today we are at 44% of female students in engineering. which compares to about 24% on average in US universities. So there also something at AUI, and I believe more generally in Morocco, is happening. On the other hand, I think we have long ways to go, and even talking to our students and sharing some of these statistics, very quickly our female students will say, but have you looked on the job market? These percentages do not hold on the job market. So something is happening. We're better academically, but somehow we're not making it there. Well, as it turns out, AUI statistics are also, I think, representative of what is happening on the job market. So it's something that we are seeing. So 35% of our staff are female. 32% of our faculty members are female, so about 1/3. Interestingly enough, in our K-12 school, we have a elementary to high school on the US system, and there 71% of the staff and faculty are female. Well, these are some statistics, but one of my first lessons about this is when I got back to AUI some 2 years ago, in one of the first meetings, I had a faculty member ask me, so will you put gender as a priority at AUI? And I'm like, what? It's not what I had in mind, and I said, because I knew some of the opportunities and challenges that after having listened for 2 months and so on, and I said in all honesty, no, I'm not putting gender as a priority. And she said, why? And I said, here's why. Here are some of the institutional priorities and so on and so forth. And for me, that was that. And I said, back then I said, because she insisted, I said, but I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to listen and learn. And one of my first lessons came actually from a student. When the Commission for the New Development Model came to visit with us, and we organized for them to meet with students and so on. So they were in tables like this with 3 students, 1 alumna or alumnus, and 2 members from the commission. And so one of the members, who was female, asked the students who were in the table, she asked, so when you graduate, will you stay in Morocco or will you leave Morocco? And there were, among the 3 students, AUI students, there was 1 male student and 2 female students. And as soon as that lady, member of the commission, finished her question, the 2 female students said, we're leaving. And she was like, why are you leaving? And they said, because we believe this is not a country for women. And they gave a number of examples. And I was shocked. Honestly, I had a little bit of tears almost coming out because I had never heard that. Have never heard it from my mom, never heard it from my sister, never heard it from my daughter, never heard it. And one of the things they said is that they said we don't feel safe in Casablanca, we don't feel safe in Rabat, we don't feel safe in Ifran. The only safe haven for us is campus. And they gave a few examples. Si Hisham was talking about harassment and this and that. So I guess that is part of it. Now, so clearly we have some statistics that show that there is humongous potential. And there are some statistics that show that we're not there yet. So what can we do as an academic institution? Well, at least one thing we can do is work on mindsets and make sure that this is, that we talk about this, that we sensitize about this, and hopefully that we engage about this. And that's what the Hillary Rodham Clinton Center for Women Empowerment was established for at AUI. Dr. Clarice Harbon, she's there. She's the director of the center. This center was established in 1999 at AUI, and one of the main ideas is to do experiential learning about this and to bring together the different stakeholders around this. But the other thing, working on the mindset, we believe is working on the mindset of all our students, including our male students, but also including our female students. I don't want to be too long, but I asked when thinking about this event, I said, could you get a quote or two from how our female students are living their life at AUI with respect to this topic? And so I have here, I had a number of quotes, but I have one here that was most representative. So Rita Jibu says, breaking the glass ceiling starts by breaking the limits of your thoughts and setting yourself free. This is the first step towards being that better version of yourself you always wanted to become. Once you do that, you start challenging yourself and figuring out how far you can go by waking up every day and walking a little step towards that. This is to say there is no ceiling besides one we created to ourselves. We're very proud to see many of our female students with this mindset. Our challenge is how to make the percentages even higher. The other challenge is that this is not only about the mindset of women. This is also about the mindset of society in general and the mindset of men also. And here I'd like to make a little confession. In the last 2 hirings of my direct reports that I've done, I gave the instruction and said, everything else being equal, I'd like a woman. I don't know how discriminatory that is. I'm sorry? It's a little bit of that, but I did it because I thought it was in the best interest of those positions at AUI right now, not because I am for giving undue advantages or any of that. So for all these reasons, I would just like to tell you that I'm extremely happy at the initiative that our colleagues have taken, both from UM6P Africa Business School and they're all female, and from AUI's business school. And what I can tell you is I'm here extremely enthusiastically, and I'm very happy to be supportive of this, and I hope that together between the 2 teams that we be able to do just a little bit more than AUI has been able to do since 1999 and since 1995 with its students. So thank you very much. Welcome. We're extremely happy to have you, and I'm now ready to shut up and start learning again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ben Said, and thank you for that quote. I think it resonates with a lot of us. I can see a lot of women nodding their heads about changing our mindset, especially with the speakers. I'm sure that's going to come up in the conversation. It's with my great pleasure to invite Mrs. Najat Vallaud-Belkacem to the stage. Mrs. Najat was the first woman to serve as Minister of Education, Higher Education and Research in France in 2014. She also served as Minister in charge of Women's Rights and the government's spokesperson. Mrs. Najat Vallaud-Belkacem is currently the director of The One, an NGO in France fighting against extreme poverty and preventable disease. She is also currently an affiliate professor at the Mohammed VI Polytechnique University. Welcome to the stage, Mrs. Najat.
you. Thank you so much. So to be perfectly balanced, I'm going to speak in French. Huh? Is it okay for everybody? Bon, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Oh là, c'est très fort. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je suis vraiment ravie d'être là. Très sincèrement, parce que ça fait déjà plusieurs mois qu'on avait calé le lancement de cet événement et que Covid oblige, on a dû revoir nos plans, n'est-ce pas? Plusieurs mois, voire années qu'on travaille à plusieurs et je voudrais surtout en remercier les équipes qui n'ont pas compté leur temps et leur énergie dans ce partenariat qui a été évoqué depuis tout à l'heure entre d'une part l'African Business School au sein de l'UM6P et d'autre part Al-Hawaii University. Monsieur le Président, ravi de vous retrouver ici pour créer à la fois une chaire, donc diversité et inclusion, et au sein de cette chaire, eh bien, ce programme dont il est question ce soir, Women in Leadership. La première fois qu'on en avait parlé, et c'était notamment, je voudrais la saluer parce qu'elle n'a pas pu rester parmi nous ce soir et lui dire que toutes nos pensées vont vers elle, avec Baya Hanoun. La première fois donc qu'on en a parlé, on était en 2019 et il sautait déjà aux yeux, franchement, de tous les observateurs un peu aguerris que notre monde a besoin de femmes à tous les échelons de la société, des femmes sûres d'elles-mêmes, de leurs capacités, prêtes à faire entendre leur voix, malgré tous les stéréotypes qui les freinent encore aujourd'hui, malgré toutes les contraintes matérielles, personnelles, parfois familiales, qui, dans les faits, les relèguent souvent au second plan, dans le champ professionnel comme dans le champ politique. Il se trouve que j'ai eu la chance et l'honneur d'exercer en France des responsabilités dans ce domaine, puisque j'ai été notamment ministre en charge des droits des femmes. Et ça m'a amené à côtoyer de très très près tous ces stéréotypes et ces barrières dont on est en train de parler depuis tout à l'heure, et qu'il s'agit de lever les unes après les autres si on veut réaliser la véritable égalité des opportunités à laquelle, je crois, toutes nos sociétés gagneraient à accéder. Pendant 2 ans, lorsque donc j'étais ministre des droits des femmes, je me suis penchée aussi bien sur la vulnérabilité des femmes, la vulnérabilité économique, la vulnérabilité physique, la vulnérabilité dans l'espace public, que sur ce qu'elles ont à apporter, les atouts des femmes. Au moins 2 points de PIB à l'échelle d'un pays, 2 points de revenu national à l'échelle d'un pays, si on les laisse contribuer comme il le faut à la croissance économique. Une incroyable solidité pour les entreprises qui ont l'intelligence de les inclure vraiment dans leur prise de décision, c'est ce que disait Fatima Zohra tout à l'heure. Une sensibilité particulière aux sujets qui sont les grands défis de notre temps, le changement climatique, bien sûr, mais plus généralement les questions éthiques, le sens du long terme et pas seulement du court-termisme. Parce que les dysfonctionnements qui empêchent les sociétés comme les entreprises de profiter de tous ces atouts-là vont se nicher dans les moindres détails et notamment d'abord dans notre culture commune, eh bien, la ministre que j'étais s'est alors prise de vouloir faire une loi, la loi pour l'égalité réelle entre les femmes et les hommes qui date d'août 2014, qui allait justement dans chacune de ces niches pour essayer de résoudre les nœuds, aussi bien dans l'éducation des enfants, oui, ça s'apprend, l'égalité entre les filles et les garçons, la non-hiérarchie entre les sexes, que dans la mixité des métiers, donc l'orientation scolaire par exemple, que dans la meilleure répartition des responsabilités domestiques, familiales entre les hommes et les femmes, parce que ce qui se passe dans le foyer a évidemment un impact direct sur votre réalité au quotidien dans l'univers professionnel, que dans l'explosion des plafonds de verre dans les entreprises, parce que c'est bien d'avoir des femmes dans les entreprises, mais c'est bien aussi de les laisser accéder aux postes de responsabilité, ou encore l'image renvoyée par les médias des femmes, car ça aussi, ça contribue beaucoup à installer, à conforter les stéréotypes dont on parle, ou enfin la place que font les partis politiques aux femmes, parce que les partis politiques parfois semblent s'engager, mais se contentent de faire semblant. Donc la loi en question avait un peu abordé tous ces sujets, et je crois qu'un certain nombre d'avancées ont été possibles grâce à ça, on y reviendra peut-être. Alors, lorsque j'ai cessé d'être ministre, donc en 2017, après avoir exercé aux droits des femmes, mais aussi à l'éducation nationale, l'enseignement supérieur et la recherche, cette quête de toujours plus d'égalité, notamment entre les sexes, aurait pu s'arrêter là, j'aurais pu passer peut-être à autre chose, mais je ne l'ai pas voulu. Je n'ai pas voulu. Et lorsque je me suis orientée vers le secteur privé, à partir de 2017, j'ai choisi d'aller dans une entreprise dont la spécialité était d'étudier l'opinion publique, parce que justement, j'avais besoin de savoir ce qui se passe collectivement dans nos têtes sur bien des sujets, dont celui-là. La raison, par exemple, pour laquelle, même quand on croit les choses gagnées, eh bien, on connaît à chaque fois des retours en arrière. Je vous en donne un exemple. En ces temps troublés par une guerre en Europe, est-ce que vous savez qu'en 2017, le même Poutine, dont on parle beaucoup en ce moment, décidait de décriminaliser la violence faite aux femmes et aux enfants? Vous voyez, un sujet sur lequel on pouvait penser que on avait eu des progrès, une loi, ben non, en fait, elle avait été retirée à ce moment-là. Est-ce que vous savez qu'en ces années qui ont été marquées par le mouvement MeToo, qui fut un mouvement quasiment planétaire et qui semblait être une formidable prise de conscience du harcèlement trop souvent subi par les femmes, notamment dans le monde du travail, est-ce que vous savez que quand on pose la question aux gens, quand les sondeurs posent la question aux gens, à votre avis, quand une femme se fait harceler, est-ce que c'est parce qu'elle l'a bien cherché? Eh bien, les personnes sondées sont bien plus nombreuses à répondre oui, maintenant, après le mouvement MeToo, qu'avant. C'est contre-intuitif, n'est-ce pas? Eh bien, en fait, ce que ça dit, c'est l'incroyable backlash, mouvement de balancier, de retour en arrière qui se produit à chaque fois, en tout cas très généralement, quand on a poussé les feux dans le bon sens sur ces sujets-là. Et ces backlash-là, tous les activistes, car il y a aussi des hommes qui se battent pour l'égalité femmes-hommes, tous les activistes de l'égalité femmes-hommes les connaissent par cœur, parce qu'en fait, voilà, ils savent qu'il faut s'attendre à cela. Et face à ces résistances au changement, eh bien, il faut évidemment s'armer à tous les niveaux, quel que soit le pays d'où l'on parle. Il faut s'armer par les lois, bien sûr, desquelles doivent disparaître les discriminations établies à l'égard du sexe dit faible, mais pas simplement faire disparaître les discriminations contre le sexe faible, c'est aussi établir les conditions concrètes d'une égalité que sinon on se contentera d'invoquer. Et ça, la loi, évidemment, a un rôle majeur à jouer. S'armer donc par la loi, s'armer aussi par les discours de raison, et c'est pour ça que le monde académique a tellement à faire sur ce sujet, évidemment, les discours de raison, parce que ce sont les discours de raison qui aideront à prendre le dessus sur la simple reconduction de schémas qu'on a toujours connus de génération en génération et qui sonnent finalement comme des repères, le statut de la femme, le statut de l'homme, on voit à peu près ce que c'est, on a toujours fait comme ça. Des discours de raison, en fait, qui donnent à voir, en particulier, que les hommes ont tout autant à gagner que les femmes à un système qui consiste non pas à remplacer une domination masculine par une domination féminine, ce n'est pas ce que nous demandons, mais simplement un monde dans lequel chaque individu, qu'il soit homme ou qu'il soit femme, n'est freiné par aucun préjugé de sexe dans les aspirations qui sont les siennes. C'est ça la quête de l'égalité réelle. Messieurs, par exemple, vous finissez quand même par comprendre que le temps passe vite, que les enfants ne sont des enfants qu'un temps, et qu'en profiter, c'est maintenant ou jamais. Alors, n'attendez pas qu'ils aient 30 ans, les enfants, pour regretter de n'avoir pas inclus ce temps passé avec eux dans votre planning. Mesdames, on vous a expliqué qu'il y avait des métiers faits pour les hommes et des métiers faits pour les femmes. Mais alors pourquoi, partout dans le monde, des femmes nous prouvent chaque jour le contraire, en brillant contre toute attente dans des secteurs qu'on leur avait présentés comme pas franchement faits pour elles, des univers scientifiques, ça a été dit, et franchement, le nombre de femmes marocaines en particulier qui brillent partout dans le monde dans l'univers scientifique, j'ai même pas besoin de donner des noms ici, c'est une évidence, mais aussi des univers politiques qui prétendra, et je ne suis pas du même parti qu'elle, mais que Angela Merkel aurait été une piètre chancelière, non. Des univers d'activistes. Pourquoi, à votre avis, les jeunes générations mobilisées contre le changement climatique se sentent particulièrement représentées par une Greta Thunberg? Donc oui, les exemples sont partout. Ne nous laissons pas bloquer par ces stéréotypes si présents encore dans notre culture. Je disais, il faut donc s'armer grâce aux lois, s'armer grâce à l'esprit critique, la raison, qui permet de savoir en fait où est notre intérêt individuel et notre intérêt collectif, et puis s'armer enfin par la capacité donnée aux femmes elles-mêmes de comprendre ce qui les attend, de passer par-dessus les barrières sans attendre qu'on leur donne une permission, de prendre conscience du rôle véritable qu'elles ont à jouer dans notre société. Et c'est l'objet de cette chaire, c'est l'objet de ce programme, donner les clés nécessaires à leur déploiement comme futurs responsables en pleine capacité d'agir. Je le disais en commençant, notre conversation sur l'idée de créer cette chaire et ce programme, elle a commencé en 2019. Et bien sûr, depuis, il y a une pandémie du Covid qui est passée par là. Et si cette pandémie du Covid a retardé nos projets de lancement de cette chaire, si elle a donné bien du grain à moudre à tous nos pays, à nos sociétés et fait souffrir un nombre considérable de gens, elle nous a aussi, cette pandémie, démontré une fois de plus, comme le fait d'ailleurs chaque crise d'ampleur, où sont nos forces, où sont nos faiblesses. Elle a montré par exemple au monde entier combien les femmes sont précieuses, à ça on était contents de les avoir, en première ligne quand il s'agit par exemple de trouver des soignantes, ou de maintenir l'équilibre des familles quand les enfants se retrouvent à étudier à la maison. Mais elle a aussi, cette crise, mis l'accent sur leur vulnérabilité. Elles qui furent, je crois qu'il y avait une Américaine parmi nous, et les chiffres étaient particulièrement frappants aux États-Unis, elles qui furent les premières à perdre leur emploi lorsque la crise économique a éclaté. C'était absolument fascinant. Quand vous regardiez les chiffres de gens tombés dans le chômage, il y avait des moments où c'était 95% des femmes, sur un trimestre entier. Donc les premières à perdre leur emploi, les premières à souffrir dans les pays plus pauvres, on va dire, de l'absence de filet de sécurité sociale, alors même qu'elles fournissent le gros des bataillons du travail informel, comme vous le savez. Les premières à se priver lorsque la nourriture vient à manquer dans les familles qui ont été touchées, y compris par des famines. Et puis les premières, redisons-le ici, à subir des violences intrafamiliales qui, dans tous les pays, malheureusement, ont explosé à l'occasion de la pandémie. Donc la crise a mis l'accent à la fois sur leur caractère indispensable à ces femmes, leur vulnérabilité, et puis enfin un troisième point tout de même, c'est qu'elle nous a ouvert les yeux, cette crise, sur le fait que, tiens, dès que les sujets deviennent sérieux, soi-disant, et c'était sérieux puisque certains ont même employé un vocabulaire guerrier pour qualifier la guerre qu'il fallait mener au Covid, etc. Donc dès que les sujets deviennent sérieux, alors vite, on s'empresse d'oublier d'inviter les femmes aux tables des débats, des analyses, du commentaire médiatique, des discussions, des décisions politiques. Sauf, évidemment, ça a été dit avant moi, dans quelques pays dont il se trouve que les leaders sont des femmes. Mais sinon, pour le reste, je vous avoue que cette voix-là, elle a quand même beaucoup manqué. Or, lorsque la voix des femmes vient ainsi à manquer, c'est aussi un certain regard porté sur les enjeux qui fait cruellement défaut. Parce que vous le savez bien, celui qui a la parole, c'est celui qui dit le bien, le mal, le juste, l'injuste, la hiérarchie des priorités, etc. Et puisque cette pandémie et ses effets catastrophiques étaient, maintenant on peut se le dire, notamment le résultat d'une notable impréparation collective de tous nos pays à des défis sur lesquels pourtant les scientifiques nous avaient alertés depuis des années, car ils nous avaient alertés quand même sur la probabilité qu'un virus nous frappe collectivement comme ça, tout comme ils nous alertent sur le changement climatique. Donc, puisque cette pandémie était le résultat de notre impréparation malgré ces alertes, j'ai envie de dire, peut-être est-il temps d'en déduire que nous aurions eu besoin de ces regards et de ces voix de femmes, de leur définition à elles aussi des priorités de nos sociétés, avant la pandémie, pendant la pandémie et aujourd'hui, évidemment, au lendemain de la pandémie. La chaire que l'on lance donc aujourd'hui n'a donc pas simplement vocation à donner aux femmes confiance en elles-mêmes, elle a vocation, par le travail de recherche qui y sera mené, à donner confiance à la société dans les femmes. Valoriser ce qui, en elles, est repéré par toutes les études sérieuses. Leur aversion aux risques inutiles, leur faible appétence pour la corruption, leur souci permanent de l'avenir de leurs enfants, leur humilité propre aux individus qui sont restés longtemps des outsiders du système. Mesdames et messieurs, dans un monde menacé par les risques permanents de guerre, quintessence du virilisme exacerbé, par le réchauffement climatique, résultat de l'avidité productive, par la multiplication des technologies incontrôlées, fabriquées dans une logique folle de course à la rentabilité, par la déconnexion de l'économie réelle et de l'économie financiarisée, par l'abondance de désinformation, etc., etc. Je ne veux pas vous plomber, mais franchement, des risques et des périls, il y en a, pour nous comme pour les plus jeunes. Dans un monde comme celui-là, le meilleur service que nous puissions nous rendre à nous-mêmes, c'est de mettre autant que possible dans le secteur public comme dans le secteur privé, à des postes de responsabilité, des femmes autant que des hommes, pour faire preuve, enfin, une fois pour toutes, de cette intelligence collective qui nous a cruellement manqué depuis, Mathusalem, et qui nous évitera peut-être cette fois-ci d'aller droit dans le mur. Et donc c'est pour cette raison que je suis si heureuse de voir enfin le lancement de ce travail commun entre nos deux universités et que je souhaite bien du succès à cette chaire, à ce programme, et que j'ai hâte de vous y retrouver. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mrs. Najat. Now welcome to the stage Ms. Amandla Uko Ombaka from McKinsey & Company sharing the Power of Parity report. Welcome to the stage.
Bonsoir vous tous. Pour maintenir la balance, je vais parler en anglais. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Amandla Oko-Ombaka. I'm an associate partner at McKinsey. I co-lead our agriculture practice across Africa. I'm going to try and do what usually takes half an hour in about 8 minutes, and just try and put a fine point on a lot of the data that we've heard today from the two presidents and from the Honorable Minister, and try and think about what it means for all of us here in this room. If there's one thing you take away from the fancy charts I will show you, it's that we cannot leave this room tonight and do nothing. If we do nothing on the question of gender equality when we leave here today, it will take 100 years for us across the continent to reach gender parity. 100 years. So if there's one thing you take away here, it is we must do something. What I will share first with you is that it's not all roses in the story of gender equality. Global progress towards gender parity has been very slight when we consider both work and society. There's a lot going on behind me, so look at me for a second and then we'll look back at the charts. But McKinsey has created an index called the Gender Parity Score. What that does is it looks at 15 indicators of gender equality, both at work and in society. At work, which is what you see on this side of me, my right side, it looks at indicators like labor force participation. It looks at indicators like unpaid work. It looks at indicators like leadership positions in formal employment. And on that front, you'll see that Africa actually is not doing bad compared to the rest of the world, but the whole world is doing bad. The closer you are to one, the closer you are to parity. So we see the closestness in parity in North America, in Western Europe. We see the lowest scores in Southeast Asia and India. Unfortunately, the picture's not much better when we look at gender equality in society. That looks at metrics including what we call essential services and enablers of economic empowerment, which include things like maternal mortality, education access, financial inclusion, digital access. It looks at legal protection and political voice, political participation. It includes physical security and autonomy. And you'll see the same trend there. North America, Western Europe are leading the pack, closest to parity. We do a bit better in Africa and India, but still very, very low. If I was to quantify this, I think it's a good thing to work on gender parity because it's the right thing to do. It also is the financially smart thing to do. What you see behind me is an analysis we ran that said, take the highest score in Africa across each of these 15 metrics and extrapolate that for the whole continent. So Rwanda, for example, does fantastic on female participation. So if we were to raise the average of every country in Africa to Rwanda's average for that metric, what would the economic impact be? And if we were to reach there by 2025, we could add $320 billion annually to GDP above business as usual. Billion with a B. That is the equivalent of adding the economy of South Africa to Africa every day, almost 3 times Morocco to the continent every single year. So there's a significant economic benefit to gain from gaining gender parity. Now, Africa is not a continent. It's not a country, I beg your pardon. We are a continent. And the outcomes across country are very, very different. So what you're seeing on the x-axis is the equality in society. So these are things like political participation that we talked about. It's legal protection, political voice. On the y-axis, you're seeing the gender equality at work. So that's your labor force participation. It's your unpaid childcare work. If you are in the top, what is on your side left, that side, you see the leaders. These are countries that are high on the continent on both society and gender parity at work. A lot of those countries are in Southern Africa, with the exception of Rwanda. And Rwanda has been a really bright spot on gender equity on all sorts of metrics. I think in the time period we looked at, which was 2015 to 2019, in middle management, Rwanda had increased participation for women by 27%. If you look at the bottom, this side, which is my bottom right, it's room for growth. A lot of Francophone West African countries are in this bucket, which means they're below the median on both equality at work and equality in society. Morocco also fits in this bucket. Morocco is right there. And then you have people who are very workplace focused in Swaziland, Nigeria, Botswana. You'll see a lot of gender parity in the workforce, but much less in society. And so we will all have to take a different path for our countries to get to gender parity. I will share one bright spot. It is no secret that in formal roles, we actually do quite well across the continent. So formal employment is a tiny share of employment on the continent. More than 80% of Africans are employed in informal sectors. But in the 20%, which I think includes most of you in this room, if not all of you, Africa actually is above the world average on representation of women on boards. And that's what you see right directly behind me. Above the US, above Latin America, and well above the global average. You see the same thing when we look at executive committees across boards in the formal space. Unfortunately, this drops off a cliff once you get into entry-level positions and into middle management. I think the stat that shocked me enormously is in North Africa, only 9% of women are in middle management, but women represent 53% of the tertiary workforce. So what President Amin was saying is not just true for Morocco, it's true for a lot of West Africa. I will do this to you once more. I'll tell you something good and then tell you something bad. When you look at political representation, Africa is actually doing really well, thanks to 3 countries. So thank you, Rwanda, thank you, South Africa, and thank you, Ethiopia. I've had the pleasure of meeting President of Ethiopia, and she's amazing. But the rest of us have a lot of work to do on political representation. And so we are quite high in the top 3 regions globally, but there's a lot of work to do. You might ask the question of, what do we then do? We have 3 or 5, actually 5 areas of intervention. I'd be excited to talk to you about them as we start the panel today. It is no shock to all of you that are educators that number 1 on this list to affect both parity at work and in society is investing in human capital. So you'll see all of these dots. The more dots that go across the page, the more levers you're pulling by an intervention. So enrolling girl children in education environments, making sure that women are equipped to enhance their digital financial literacy, deploying funds to build effective, accessible healthcare systems. All of that is investing in human capital and touches both work and society. Creating economic opportunities is important, which includes leading from the top with clear strategies and targets. If you say all things equal, hire women. In fact, as a woman, I'll tell you, make the bar twice as high and clear it, you will still get women in those positions. Those sorts of economic opportunities being created is another big lever. I'll leave you with the last three, which is leveraging technology. Creating women-friendly digital products is important. Women-friendly does not mean make everything pink. No. It means understanding that women use technology differently. Women, if they have work at home and work at work, will need to access digital opportunities at different times. In North Africa, for every 1 hour of unpaid work that men do, women do 6.7 hours. So digital tools need to take that into account. It's important to shape attitudes, which is including male champions in everything we do, but also running campaigns for awareness. I see a lot of shock and horror with these numbers. People need to know about them. And finally is enforcing laws and policies and regulations that will protect and empower women. I will leave you with that for today. Don't do nothing. And let's use the panel to talk about and hear other perspectives on what we can all do.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Don't go too far, you're coming up next. If I can welcome the panel to the stage. This one is for David, and then the rest is for you. Great. So our panel discussion this evening is going to be moderated by David Hayes. David is a successful corporate leader, turned innovator and serial entrepreneur, and now professor of entrepreneurship and innovation at the Africa Business School. David's areas of research include gender and diversity topics, as well as growth mindset. Through his work, whether at the university or on the field, David is passionate about helping to grow the next generation of great African leaders. Our panel features Manal Bernossi, who's the Director of International Partnerships, Strategy, Communication at Casablanca Finance City. We have Ms. Hafsat Abiola, who's the President of Women in Africa Initiative, and Ms. Amanda Uko-Mbaka, who just now presented. She's the Associate Partner and Co-Lead of Agriculture Practice at McKinsey & Company. Thank you all so much. David, take it away.
Thank you very much. Sometimes I think my job is really hard, but as a recovering entrepreneur, and then now as an academic, that is probably not true. Sometimes I think my job is really, really awesome. This is one of those times. I've gotten the chance to meet the panelists that you have, as well as Najat, who is here. We're going to involve her in questions if you wish to have questions. She's been gracious enough to say, she gave some information to you. So let's give more time to the leaders that you see up on the stage. But this time for me has been a fantastic time because these are amazing thought leaders. So my job is to ask some questions, and then you're going to get some great responses about the topic, and that topic is breaking through the glass ceiling. But remember, we're speaking about corporate glass ceiling, yes, but also about society. What can we do with society to break through the glass ceiling to improve diversity, inclusivity, and then ultimately make a social impact? So my job is going to begin by welcoming our panelists here. Thank you to see all of you guys here. I'd like to start with a basic question, and I think I'm going to start with you, Hafsa. I'm going to ask her a little to share her background with you. Her background is you're going to see is an amazing thing in terms of diversity of what she's done. A human rights leader, a civil rights leader, a fighter for democracy, and of course a promoter of women's rights, and then dealing with women's violence issues. But welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my question for you. Your amazing background, right? Okay, so what I really want to know is how has that background shaped your perspective on this topic about women's leadership and about how women's leadership can really promote a better society?
Thank you so much. Ça fait déjà peut-être 10 ans que c'était ma première fois pour venir au Maroc. Et maintenant, je suis mieux avec, en parlant le français, mais ce n'est pas comme anglais. Et ça, si ça ne vous dérange pas, je voudrais parler en anglais, parce que c'est plus facile pour moi. So I just want to say how incredible it is for me to be here with all of you. The very first time I came to Morocco, it was at the invitation of Bushra Benhidi. She was doing a program with Le Matin, and we became sisters at that event. And I followed her in her career. Wherever she goes, Bushra will invite me again to this incredibly beautiful country. And so she was at the Policy Center for the New South, the Atlantic Dialogues that became the Policy Center. She's part of the Social Innovation Lab, and from there she put my name forward for this event. So you will have her to blame if I'm just a complete disaster. But I just want to say how incredible it is to watch someone like Bushra, because she's so courageous, always going into all the spaces where it's dominated by men, but with the confidence that she's representing women. She goes in not to become like a man. She goes in to fight to create more space for women. And you asked about my background. So the long and short of it is that I'm from a country further south of yours, Nigeria. I think Nigeria and Morocco signed probably the biggest investment deal in Africa last year in 2021 for gas to be piped from Nigeria to Morocco, because you have phosphate, we have gas, and it would be a perfect marriage. And that gas would also be piped to Europe. So I think it's like many billions, I don't know the exact number. But it makes me so incredibly happy to have OCP in Nigeria, also doing very well in Nigeria, and to see more and more Moroccan business coming into sub-Saharan Africa. There was a Moroccan businessman that contacted me a few months ago that he wants small oranges, and my organization just sent him a shipment, which we hope is first of many. He has a company that makes fragrance perfumes, and he needs that. I really think that Africa must unite, and I think business is one of the best ways, because it creates win-win. And I don't know if you've studied the former minister can tell us better about European history, but when the EU was going to begin its long journey to becoming the European Union, there was a deal to exchange coal and steel between Germany and France. And that was the basis upon which they started. So when I think of this gas and phosphate deal between Nigeria and Morocco, to me it's similar to the coal and steel, and it's the future. My family was very involved in helping my country at a critical junction in the 90s, where we had been under military rule for over 20 years, and the government wanted to have, had said that it's time to turn over to a democratic system. So my father, who was a businessman, it was probably one of the wealthiest on the continent, not in my country, but in Africa, decided that he was going to run for president. And maybe unluckily for him, he won the election. It was landslide. So landslide that the kind of victory my father experienced has never been repeated till today. And he won in 1993, which was about, I don't know how many, 19 years ago. Now, after he won, the military decided that they'd made a mistake, that they didn't want a democratic system. So they put him in jail after negotiating with him for a year. And my mom, a high school graduate, started organizing and leading the movement for democracy in my country. My mom was Gangster. She was on BBC, she was on Voice of America. She organized the market women to go on strike. She paid to help the oil workers union. And you know, oil is so key for Nigeria's economy. She shut down the economy of the country for 3 months. So when the military saw that this tiny woman that they'd ignored could do all of that, they decided that if she could be so troublesome, if they'd put her husband in jail and she can still be so troublesome, that they needed to do something more extreme about my mom. So one day she was driving to a meeting and her car was ambushed and she was gunned down. My father never came out of prison alive because after my mother was killed, I became this activist. I was to graduate 2 days after my mother was killed in America. I was at Harvard waiting for my graduation, and my mother was killed on the 4th of June. The graduation was on the 6th. So as soon as she was killed, I just took charge of the children because I was the second, and the youngest at the time was 7. And I took charge of them, and I started to also lead the movement from exile. And it was incredibly challenging. We would go into meetings, it would be all men in those meetings. And I never had any challenge speaking because I knew I was speaking for a woman who did more than all those men, because all those men were never a threat to the military. They were not killed. My mother was killed, and I was not going to allow my voice to be silenced when I needed to speak for her and for the half of the population of Nigeria, which were women. And we built a movement that was so strong that the military had to leave power. But before they left, just before they left, they gave us my father's dead body because I think they figured that they couldn't bring him out alive, having killed his wife. So I lost both parents. And so today what I want to say, if I have a message about the insight that I have about life, about change, it's this. Change is possible. It happens every day. People are making change every day. But the kinds of change that really has an impact, you have to sacrifice for it. You know, the civil rights movement, the African Americans sacrificed, and it's what made it possible for me and for many minorities. I think many of you in Morocco could go to America and fit in, you know, and be in the front of the bus because maybe they wouldn't know that that you're African, because really, if you look in the mirror, you could really pass for an American, a white American. But for people like me who have this color skin, when I went to America, to Harvard, I never had a problem whether in the front of the bus or in the back of the bus. That was my decision. African Americans fought for that. They sacrificed for that. And my message to you is this. You know, Africa today, you know, with Ukraine, all that is happening in Ukraine, what is the truth about that? The Africans, the black Africans, and even the Indians, which tells me that possibly even the Moroccans that are there, when they're being told, when they want to get on the train, that if you're black, you are supposed to walk. And they're facing all kinds of discrimination. It's not just in Ukraine, it's all over the world, because we're seen to be the bottom of every ladder. And that can change. It can change in one generation if this generation makes the sacrifices, and we must. We must. I think your king set the stage a few years ago when he went to the African Union, and he said to the African Union, he said, "Today I have come home." When I heard him say that, I cried. For a North African to understand that Africa is your home, that's gangster. And that's actual vision. So if you understand that, and we are the women, yes, we're supposed to talk about the power of women. Women have power, but what we use the power for is the most important. We must use it to create a world that receives African people as equal. That's our task. And yes, we have to become equal to do that, but if we become powerful and we don't do that, then the power is nothing.
As a moderator, I'm not sure what to say after that, except have a good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us, Manel. So I know you well. I'm reminded to let you know that your EMBA homework is due by Friday, tomorrow night. No, that's a joke. But I do know Manel from our executive MBA program. I know her as a corporate leader. I know her now as an entrepreneur. And I know her superpower comes from her twins. So welcome, Manel. My question to you here is, I'm really interested in knowing about your background, what you're doing now, and then how it frames your perspective on women's leadership.
Thank you, David. Can I call you David? You guys, he's my professor at the MBA. It's going to be Professor David for me, okay? I'm going to just stick to that. First, I really want to say how grateful and how energized I feel being amongst you all tonight, and I feel really so touched and empowered about all you shared. So thank you. And each time I'm asked to introduce myself, I am really mindful and intentional about the words that will come next. I believe that whatever words you put after I am are extremely powerful. So yes, I come from an engineering background. I come from the corporate world. I have been climbing that corporate ladder for the past 17 years. I was a consultant once in Paris. I'm so grateful for the achievements. I have joined the the executive committee of the company I'm working at, have been elected recently to the board of directors of the World Alliance of International Financial Centers. So that's definitely my world, and that's part of who I am. But I am also a mom, I am a wife, I am a daughter, I am a sister, and I am an MBA student, and I launched a podcast, and frankly, I do not want to have to choose any of that. So what I say now when I'm asked to introduce myself is I am a multi-passionate person and a lifelong learner on a self-development journey. So that's who I am.
Thank you. May I follow up with you? So on that, with that background, frame the issue of women's leadership for me. Give me some of your thoughts on it, and then how do we change this perspective of breaking through the glass ceiling for society?
Sure. Well, the perspective that I want to bring in this evening is really about working on yourself and your personal development. That's really the perspective I want to bring in today. We all need to work on developing the skills, the habits, the mindset to experience the better version of ourselves and really to thrive to become our most authentic self. We're talking about breaking through the glass ceiling. I believe to break through the glass ceiling, first, we need to get the job done. Like, whatever you're doing, whatever industry you're at, whatever you're doing in this world, first you need to master doing that. Like, that's the fundamental thing. That's the best thing we could all do to serve the cause, get the job done. But while we're doing that, we need to be working on ourselves. We need to be working on the mindset. And that's really what's gonna help us navigate the toughness that comes from us facing the gender gap. So I really think it is so important to give yourself the space to understand who you truly are, what you're truly looking for, what are your core values, and because that's really the space where you will feel the most aligned, and most importantly, that's the space where you will have the most impact. And that's really important. There is a lot of suffering that comes from our inability to articulate what it is that we really want in our head. A lot of suffering comes from there. So I think clarity is power. I think it's our North Star. Sometimes in the corporate world, it gets rocky, right? I mean, you need to connect back to that purpose and your inner strength. And that's really going to be my main message tonight, is really to work on your personal development, on your mindset, and that's why I launched the podcast.
Thank you very much. Amandla, you're our data person. Okay, so we're going to ask you a data question. What is your perspective from the data that talks about individual preparation, and then maybe also society impact? Or maybe I say it this way, do you see in the data that we have a need for that individual preparation? Do you see a need of how women's leadership with individual preparation can drive economic or societal impact?
Thanks, Professor. So the data does show that individual impact is critical. Hello. Now, can you hear me?
Are you able to hear? Yes?
Okay. So the collective is made up of several individuals, and unfortunately what you see in the data is a lot of bias. If you are women in a leadership position, oftentimes I think what we've seen is women are elevated to leadership positions where they're not set up to succeed. And so what the problem ends up being is you put someone in a situation where no man or woman will succeed, and then you say it was a woman, therefore she did not succeed, therefore we will not elect more women into that position, or select more women for that position. And so there's a bias for putting women in leadership positions that no one can handle. I think Marissa Mayer is probably the most emblematic example of that. When she took over Yahoo, no one could save Yahoo. And so individual preparation, individual action is important, because as a woman you will be in positions that are harder than the average, which in society is a white man, 5'7". So that individual preparation is really important. But individual preparation alone is not enough, because what we also see in the data is that when you're a woman leader, people want you to be compassionate and to be kind and be empathetic. But when you ask what you're looking for in a leader, you want individuals that are strong and unrelenting. And those are things that we don't often associate with traits of leadership that women are expected to display. So the individual is important, the community is important, because the way you begin to change that narrative, the way you begin to change the data is you make sure that you have panels with women. No more manels, no more manels, right? These three individuals are changing the collective narrative about what it means to be a speaker on a panel like this. And so the individual does build up into the collective.
Thank you very much. So all of you, here's a question for all of you, sort of react to this statement. So it's individual responsibility and it's community responsibility. Do you agree with that? And if so, why? Or if not, why?
Yeah, it's definitely individual responsibility. As I said, I think there is part of it we need to be working on ourselves, but of course it is also, it's not a female versus male problem. It's a society problem. And it's not about, literally 2 days ago, I was with my team and we were looking for this visual for International Women's Day. And they were like researching on Google, on internet, and they came up with this image of a rope and then female on one side and men on the other side. It's really not about that. It's about doing, both of us, like together, collectively, what is right, what is needed to be done. I mean, we heard the data. It's just crazy. it would take us, you said, 142 years, 100 years for us to reach gender parity. Like being a mom, that means that's like 6 generations, 7 generations, like any of us here in this room attending today would witness that. So that is just crazy. And then what you said is just a financially smart thing to do, like 10% of GDP. We're in the corporate world, we're trying to create value. Like just by doing measures like this, we would gain 10% of GDP of total Africa. So it's definitely individual and also a collective responsibility. That would be my take on this.
What I would say is that the big challenge for us isn't just to break the glass ceiling, because that's about the women at the top. And I think, that's always ever going to be a minority of women. I think the greater challenge for the African continent is the generality of women. And for them, that's a development ceiling. We have to break the development gap that Africa faces. And I think that the leading women need to focus on that, even if it's going to be at the expense of breaking the glass ceiling. Because for Africa to do well, it's not for the top women to do well. It's actually for the generality of Africans to do well, which begins with the generality of women doing well. So we could focus on the glass ceiling because we're elite women. But if we're concerned about the continent and concerned about collective prosperity, we would not. So the choice is ours. Is it individual responsibility or group responsibility? It depends on what we're looking to achieve. If we're looking to advance individually, then it's individual responsibility. But if we're looking for group advancement, which has the potential to help 1.3 billion people, which is our population on the African continent, then we need to then focus with a laser attention on group performance. How do the 54 African states excel together? How do we make that happen? What are the key associations in Morocco working with women that we can be connecting to all the different 53 other countries, that we can rise together? There's a great saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. At the end of the day, when the generality's well-being is secured, the lives of the elite will be even that much more rich. So it's a win-win. But I think we had a Martin Luther King moment for Africa, where at America in 1960, having passed the Education Act but never enforced it and facing a lot of discrimination. And Martin Luther King, who was one of the most elite of the African Americans, decided that the work that needed to be done was to change the norm for the generality of African Americans. We are at that moment now. I want us to focus. We can talk about ourselves individually, but we are not France. We are not Germany. We are not the United States. We are not the United Kingdom. We're Morocco, we're Nigeria, we're Egypt, we're South Africa, we're Kenya, we're Senegal. We're African countries in which 50% of the people are either unemployed or underemployed, in which people are struggling to eat, in which there's no movement to to transform the mindset of the generality of people. The president spoke earlier. He said he had tears in his eyes when he got such negative feedback. Don't be sad. It is just fact. What is lifting the generality of people in Morocco? There's a lot that is happening, but is it going to reach all the people in the villages? So, the culture of a society is the average of the people. And if there's nothing getting to them that helps them be enlightened, they will drag down the whole country. They will drag down the whole continent. Amandla, I love your name. Are you South African?
No, Kenyan, but South African.
Oh, check it. But that's a South African name. Means power. Check it. I love it. Okay, so now Amanda was sharing her research. There's another research that I'm going to provide to Bushra and to Fatima Zahra and to Professor David by a Harvard professor called Professor Norris, Pippa Norris. She did the research on behalf of the UN Women. You know, last year they celebrated, Paris welcomed them when they celebrated 25 years after Beijing. She looked at the whole world and she looked and said, what is the progress after 25 years after Beijing? Let me tell you that for the continent of Africa, if you had read the report, you would have wept. I have 2 children, a boy and a girl, darling, Khalil and Shahrazad, but we call her Annabella after my ex-husband's mom. And they're darling, you know, and they're so full of life and they're so supportive of each other. There isn't a war between men and women if the context is the right context. In our family, we're fighting for our family. So even though my ex is my ex, we're still like, we move in one ship because we're fighting for the family, which is fighting for the children. Now, look at Africa. Why would the men be holding women down? Because as a collective, we've not signaled to them that we're moving in one ship. You signal to men that we're moving in one ship, they'll be worried about the performance of every person on that ship because they know it's dragging down the ship. That was what China signaled to the people of China. When Chairman Mao became head of China, he ended polygamy. He moved for education of girls and boys. He ended the breaking of feet of girls because he knew that the country must compete. And what country is number 2 in the world today if it's not number 1? If we send the signal, our people will move. And that's a signal that must be sent as a group. Then everybody will move.
Thank you so much. I should say this in just a few minutes. We're going to open up the floor to questions. So you're going to get questions of these amazing leaders, including Najat, who is sitting down here at the table. So think of some questions you'd like to ask. I think you've got some really powerful voices here. So I'd say take advantage of asking any questions that you may have. Manal, let me ask you, because we just spoke a little bit about the collective. This is probably my personal bias because I teach a lot of mindset and I teach a lot of growth mindset, but your podcast, Leaders on Purpose. Tell me about it and then your perspective on how to help women better prepare for the future.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so it takes just a little while to come. Yeah, so, you know, I felt that launching a podcast was a beautiful way to connect at the deepest level with people and talk about some of these topics that are so important. I personally benefited from podcasts and saw the huge impact it had on me. Like back in 2020, with all the craziness going out there, you know, the pandemic and everything, I couldn't bear anymore all the negativity and I was craving for positive content. So I listened to a lot of podcasts and frankly, I saw the huge impact it had on me. So I hired a coach, took back control of my health and fitness routine and eventually I just decided that it was time for me to do less consuming and more creating and to pay it forward. And so Leaders on Purpose is, I named it Leaders on Purpose because we're all leaders, right? You're either leading a company or you're leading a team or you're leading a family or you're leading yourself to the next level. So we're all leaders, right? And purpose, because purpose is just the most important pursuit in life, is thinking you can do nothing or thinking you can do anything, that's what stops you from doing something. And we are not destined to do nothing, and we are not destined to do anything. We were destined to do something unique, something beautiful, something that is really us. So that's really what purpose means to me. And I really think that it's so important to remind ourselves that we need to keep focusing on these topics, on the growth mindset. So as I said, I bring a new episode every other Sunday. I interviewed Jeff Hoffman, who's a worldwide motivational speaker, and he was part of the launch of Booking.com, and he's also the CEO of Priceline.com. Grammy Award. I interviewed Professor David Hayes. I'd love for you to go and listen to his episode about growth mindset. And amazing ladies, and these people really inspire us to take action. And I think that's really at the core of what we need to be working on. It's really fundamental to give ourselves that space to work on these topics, because if we're going to break through the glass ceiling, let's start by breaking through our own limiting beliefs. That's really something we need to be doing.
Thank you very much. Okay, just in a minute, we're going to turn the questions over to all of you. But I have sort of a final maybe question. Maybe this is more advice for the audience. So as we look out at the audience here, we see probably mostly female out in the audience. But if you had to be able to give them individual advice for themselves, what would it be? And then how about collective advice? What's the one or two things we should start working on to promote women's leadership?
Giving people advice, I guess is what I get paid to do, but...
Are you saying you need money? No.
So, on an individual level, ask for forgiveness, don't ask for permission. The best decisions of my life are where I just did what I needed to do, or what I felt like I needed to do. And people will tell you you're crazy, so, I do most of my work in agriculture. 30% of the continent's GDP in some countries is agriculture. Everyone is like, you can't have a career at McKinsey doing agriculture. This is what I want to do. So I will ask for the forgiveness when we get there. So on an individual level, I think you have to do you, and I've heard resonance of that with Hafsat and Nini. And then the collective advice is, life is a team sport. And I think too often as women, we think we have to be the warrior. We have to be strong for everybody. We cannot ask for help. And that is exhausting, so exhausting. So life is a team sport. Ask for help and help each other. Help men out, they need a lot of help. But do life together, do life as a community. Suffering is better in community, and happiness and joy and celebration are better in community.
I think that I feel like she's already said everything that needed to be said about that. I mean, I would just add that I really believe that, be gangster. Be gangster. Really, believe in yourself and what you can do, and do it. And don't take yourself so seriously. I sincerely believe that the universe is aligned with us. The universe, if we say yes, the universe starts moving to make that yes happen. But the first thing is we have to say yes. So say yes, even to the things that scare you. And stand up for yourself. Speak up for yourself. Do it with your spouse. Do it with your children. Especially with your children, and especially with your son. Don't make your son too comfortable. It's my way. I just like to take care of my children. Nigerians, for us, number 1 to 10 is the children. We can put the children above everything. And I like to make the food and to check and to do this. And the other day I saw an ad. It was from India. And a girl, she called her mom. She had recently gotten married. She was very well educated. And she was telling the mom that the husband needs her to do more chores around the house, so she was going to leave her job. And the mom was so upset. And as the mom was upset talking to the daughter, she was also packing up her son's laundry. And she just told the daughter that she would call her back. And then she woke her son and went to show him how to do the laundry. That was a very important moment for me, because I realized that my job is not just to be their mom and take good care, but to prepare them for their future. And the future I envision for the planet is one in which men and women are equal. I want my son to be so gangster in that world that the woman he marries would just be awestruck that, how did I get so lucky? So whenever, I can tidy after my son, but many times I wait when he comes from school. I say, Khalili, let's go. You need to take care of that. You need to take care of this. And I'm sure he's irritated, but I'm his mom, and the mom is always like a jewel in their son's eye. So he will listen, and I make him very uncomfortable. I push him so that when his wife does it later, he's used to it and he's not responding in a negative way, and he's supportive. He thinks it's natural. That's my job, to help make the way for him and for her. And so in a way, through that I'm building the future. So when I say be gangster, I also mean be honest. Really, when I'm with women of privilege, as I say, my family, we had private jets. After the whole fight with the military, we had pretty much nothing. And I really mean it when I say be honest, because we're in a lie. All of the things that we have around us are lies. But what is real? Human emotion, legacy. When you make an impact, that's real. What Martin Luther King did, that's real. Everything else, everything we say we own, that's nothing, because when we die, that will rust. What will be remain of it? But if we make a difference in the world, when we die, that remains. That's real. So try to be honest about your life, because yes, there are things you're trying to achieve, but I really could care less what you're trying to achieve for yourself as much as I care about what you're going to achieve and leave behind. The Chinese say, if they're asked, what will you do if you want to make an impact in 100 years? They say they would plant a tree. My question to you would be, what tree are you planting with your life? And what kind of shade will it provide for those that will sit under it? Be gangster like that, and show people that all these other things that advertising is trying to sell to you, you see right through it, and you couldn't give you could care less. Show them with your life, because then you have power. Because we have power, but the whole world is always helping to try to take that power away from us. They give us a lot of false information. They're always lying. They're always telling things we don't really need. The truly powerful people are the people who protect their mind, their bandwidth, so that they can go for it. I want you to be that person.
I would say, number one, stop expecting change to come from the outside. Change has to come from within. Stop waiting for change from the leaders or your managers or your parents. You cannot control the external circumstances, but what you can control is your reaction to those circumstances. You are not the manager of your circumstances, you're the creator of your life. So first, I would say, stop waiting for change to come from the outside. I used to be a huge fan of Michael Jackson. I was a little bit embarrassed about it. Now I totally own it. And, and there's a song that goes, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself, then make the change. So that would be my number one. 2, make your partner a real partner. I cannot stress that enough. You gotta pick well, ladies. You gotta have a good picker. If the most important life decision, I believe the most important career decision actually is choosing who your life partner will be, if that's the choice that you make for yourself, obviously. But if you do choose that path for yourself, then make sure you see eye to eye on the future. Make sure to talk about your ambitions. That's really important. Be upfront about it. My husband is here this evening. I don't want to put him on the spot, but I'm so grateful to have his support. And I'm really so grateful because it is a 50-50 partnership. You will need all the support you can get, because this game of life, it gets tough sometimes. It really does. So make your partner a real partner. It would definitely be on my list. And number 3, invest in your support system. As I said, I don't want to have to choose between all those hats, so invest in your support system. If you need to go get that nanny, go for it. If you need to reach out to your aunt, your sister, your mom, stop thinking you can do it all by yourself. It takes a village. It really does. And so find communities. Find yourself a mentor to show the best that is in you. I am a member of wonderful communities. I'm sure many of them are watching us tonight. We for She, Montorel also. These are just supportive communities, and we need that in our lives. We need women supporting women. We need women empowering women. That makes a huge difference, and it really, really helps. We're just there cheering for ourselves whenever one of us is doing something, networking. That's really the spirit that we need. So reach out to those communities, and we do have options now. I mean, with the internet, I'm a member of also with communities all over the world. So reach out to those supporting communities. It is so important. And finally, I would stress again, work on your limiting beliefs. Work on yourself. As I said, if we're going to break through the glass ceiling, we need to be working on our own limiting beliefs. And, you know, a big one is self-care is not selfish, okay? Let's state that. Self-care is not selfish. I mean, most women, all the women that I know actually have been raised from the time they were little that to be a good woman, you need to be a good person for other people, okay? So if you're a good mom to your children, or if you're a good wife to your husband, or if you're a good sister, or if you're a good daughter, but no one would come and say, hey, Hassan, you're preparing for a marathon. Good for you. What a good mom you are. I mean, you really need to take care of yourself in order to be pouring to other people, and that's so important. And also the tough thing about that is that your internal value is wrapped up in other people's perception of you, which is not okay. You cannot, you know, that self-worth is so important, and you need to own back and take back ownership for that. So yeah, those would be my 4 pieces of advice.
Thank you very much for all of that. Now it is your turn. What questions do you have for the amazing panel, which includes Najat as well? So ask away. We have some microphones for you. Who has our first question?
I'm going to quickly mention, I know it's getting late, but we have a great networking dinner after, so it's part of building this community. So if we're going to ask for your patience to just wait around a little bit. So if there are any questions, please raise your hand.
Bonjour, bonsoir plutôt. Je vous remercie tout d'abord pour votre conférence. C'était très très intéressant, très inspirant aussi. Alors moi, ma question, moi aussi en fait, j'ai de grandes ambitions. J'espère pouvoir y arriver un jour. J'essaye de faire beaucoup de choses, mais depuis que je suis maman, depuis 2 ans et demi, j'ai un petit nuage de culpabilité qui m'accompagne tout le temps. J'ai l'impression que je suis jamais assez présente pour mon fils, que c'est jamais assez, que quand je me déchaîne dans le travail, que je garde pas suffisamment d'énergie pour mon fils, qu'il y a toujours quelque chose qui manque. Et du coup, c'est de l'énergie que je perds du coup à réfléchir à ce genre d'idées et qui du coup, je pense, m'empêche de donner le meilleur de moi-même dans certains aspects de ma vie. Et du coup, je voulais savoir comment gérer cette culpabilité et comment peut-être en sortir quelque chose de bien. Voilà. Merci beaucoup.
Turn the microphone on, Manal. Push the button. Push the button. Oh, there you go.
It's better now? Okay, thank you. Well, that's a great question. I mean, we all have been there, right? Work-life balance is a big one. And what I would like to share is there are seasons in life, okay? And there is a time for everything. As Najat was sharing earlier, kids grow, and you'll have plenty of time. If you want to be fully there for your kid right now, then it's okay. And if you're not fully there, then that's also okay. You are okay, you're fine. The way I see it is there are buckets. There is the family bucket, there is the personal bucket, the work bucket, there's time for yourself. And it's like filling up those buckets, but they're not perfectly filled at the same time. So what I do think is, yes, you can have it all, but not at the same time. And that's okay. That's okay. So just keep an eye, and when you feel that one of the buckets is going down, then you're focusing a little bit more of energy there. And then when you need to be fully concentrated on something else, then that's where you're gonna put your energy. But the one thing I would stress once again, is your me time. Me time should be a non-negotiable, because in order to be available for your son, you need your cup to be full. And it's okay to lean on your partner, once again, to lean on your mom, to lean on the nanny, to lean on your support system, to take time for yourself. But that should be a non-negotiable. That would be my advice to you.
We have a question here.
Hi, I have a question to Hafza or Hafza? No, freedom starts with how I should pronounce your name, not how you think I should. How do you? Hafza. Yes. My name is Clarice. I'm a professor of international law at AUI, and I'm running the Hillary Clinton Center for Women's Empowerment. And I have a question for you. First of all, to be a bridge of beacon of life between so much death to giving birth to your kids and being that beacon of life, it's overwhelming and devastating and strong. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's to lose your both parents in such a proximity of time is beyond comprehension. That's a big sacrifice. So thank you for sharing that. But I have a question. So it's a bit of a tease question, okay? So we're talking about gender, and don't you think, guys, that gender is just one component, that we're limiting ourselves when we think only about gender? Kimberly Crenshaw, one of my mentors, I'm a graduate of Yale. Well, she's an NYU. Wrote a very seminal article called...
Clarice, we won't hold that against you.
No, it's okay. We say Harvard. It's okay. We won't. I won't hold that against you too, because we are number one. It's great. So my question is this: gender is not enough to measure anything, because the idea of intersectionality, Kimberly Crenshaw said, you might be a woman, but you might be gay, you might be black, you might be Indian. You bring with yourself so many intersectionalities that bring about your inferiorities intersecting together, right? So we cannot, the problems that a black woman or a Moroccan woman in France are not the same of a white French woman in France, right? So I'm teasing you there. That's one thing. And then one to know what you think, because you gave China as an example, right? China for me is the example of the opposite, is the example of, of Uyghur minorities that are being, genocide right now, or Tibetans, right? So no, it's a big question. Because I think a part of the problem that we suffer is not just the gender, is to shift the focus from the gaze of the West on us, right? The US should not be the reference point to which we should compare development. Because the US is one of the lowest numbers in women's participation in Congress or in Senate, right? It's actually very close to Morocco. So, and Morocco is much more impressive here because Morocco started late, right, in the 60s. So Morocco is doing much better actually than the United States, right? So I think that we should shift the gaze also to look at Africa from Africa, because America is also a place that shoots Black American kids just for being Black, right? So that would be my question. My question for you.
So Clarice, is it working? Wait, maybe before I start with Clarice, what was your name? Qu'est-ce que vous appelez-vous? Mariam? Toutes les femmes, tous les mamans pensent comme vous. Nous voulons faire tout pour les enfants. Si nous avons 24 heures, nous voulons même utiliser tous les 24 heures pour les enfants. C'est normal s'il y a des autres choses, mais votre entreprise, avec l'entreprise, vous préparez quelque chose de différent aussi, qui est en atout pour les enfants, pour votre fils. Et ça, c'est normal qu'en train de créer quelque chose de nouveau, il exige du temps, et c'est normal. Il faut être très patiente avec vous-même et avoir confiance en soi. Et il faut aussi vous assurer que votre fils comprend. Et il a confiance en vous. Vraiment. Les enfants sont comme ça. J'étais toujours très fière de mes parents. Et je crois que mes parents me donnent un pays libre, en démocratie. Et je suis toujours confiante, même ils n'ont pas avec moi. Donc, il faut avoir confiance en votre fils. Il comprend ce que vous faites. Il comprend que vous le faites pas pour vous-même, c'est pour l'avenir. Vous laissez pour lui cette entreprise. Bonne chance, hein? Et Clarice, so I'm so happy with your question, and I'm so happy to hear that you're the person in charge at that Ronald Clinton Institute. I'm part of Vital Voices. I've been part of it for like 20 years. It's an organization that Hillary Clinton created. What I want to make sure that we're clear on about this event, if there are any of the associations that I'm part of that would be useful for the women in this room. I know I said I don't really have any time for the glass ceiling. I really don't. But I do have time for my sisters. And whether it's the World Economic Forum, Young Global Leaders Community, or Vital Voices, or even women in Africa, we do a lot of support work for entrepreneurs. Let me know, and we will connect you so that you can benefit from that. Because I think the more you have, the more you can do. And the higher you go, the more power and authority, and then the more impact you can have. So for me, it's a win for the generality of women and generality of people, especially the poor. Clarice, to your question, now I lived in China, my Chinese is as good as my French, and my French isn't bad at all because I don't need a translator to understand French. It's probably C1 level, and my Chinese is as good as that. I lived in China for 3 years. I did my master's at Tsinghua in international development. I love the Chinese. My little girl, who is 13 years old, decided that she would arrive after 6 months of pregnancy. She was like a lizard or like a Barbie doll, whichever one you want to believe. She was so small, and her lungs were hardly formed. She was born in Beijing. If you saw the move my Chinese doctors and nurses made on that girl. Now she's like, I'm not short. My little girl, 13, she's way taller than me. She looks down on me. But her personality is just so sweet and darling. So you never feel like, oh, she's going to beat me. She's never going to beat me. She's just darling. She's Annabella, she remains the same, even though now she's a giant. And I just have so much respect. I have so much respect for gangsters. I really believe in them. And when you look at the Chinese, they're not the people you would think of as gangsters. They're so quiet. They say less than they are thinking. You know, they say very little. If they're thinking 100, they may say 2. You know, and so they're so different from everything that is Nigerian, you know, because Nigerians, if they're thinking 100, they'll say 200 things. You know, we're just, which is the opposite. And oh, it was such a pleasure to be there. And you know why I'm confident to tell you this? The truth is I love everybody. And I feel like that's natural for me as an African to love everybody. Why? Because the whole world came from here. All of humanity came from here. So if I engage with Asia, if I engage with Europe, if I engage with America, I'm engaging with my descendants. We sent them all over. I now go and reconnect. I am their mother. I am their ancestral spirit. I go to check on my children. So I'm happy. I'm happy with the Chinese. Of course, there are things they have to do, but there are many things they've done. You know, and of course, you know, if you want to look at them really with a critical eye, you would not spend all the time criticizing them. It's just not possible. The whole Millennium Development Goals, the world attained it on the back of China. All the 8 goals of the MDGs, it was on the back of China's rise that the world attained those goals. So I don't know why we're all there. Is it the same Americans that only just put an American Indian woman as member of government? How many hundreds of years is the United States? And they've only just managed. These native Indians, without them, oh, I'm so sorry, man. Like your husband is going to come. Your husband is going to come and rescue you. Don't worry. I will not do any permanent damage to the beautiful man now. Don't worry. You know, the whole world has given permission to America to learn and grow. And we keep looking and supporting them and saying, how can we support them to learn and grow? Do we want to talk about France? Do we want to talk about France in Africa in that sense? And still, we Africans look to France and say, oh, égalité, fraternité, liberté. Okay, well, we know what you were doing all over Africa, but since you say these are your guiding values, we continue to appreciate all the ways in which you keep working to meet, to fulfill the essence of that. You know, if we can do that for Europe, after our history with Europe, which, if you like, I can begin to educate you, and I'm sure I don't need to, then what can we not do for China? What can we not do for Japan? What can we not do for South Korea? What can we not do for Latin America? They're asking us to make a choice. Actually, the whole continent of Africa has been asked to make a choice today. We say no. And I remind you of one of our elders, the first president of the democratic president of Ghana, the first black country to gain independence after the whole colonial era, Kwame Nkrumah. He said, we look neither to the west nor to the east. We face forward.
Thank you, Hafsat. We're going to take one last question over here before we go to the closing.
Thank you very much. So I am Zina Baiz. I am in charge of innovation within a bank here in Morocco, Pan-African Bank, and I'm also president and founder of Montorel that Manel talked about, and thank you, Manel. And I am also here with the guilt of being here after 9 o'clock because my children are keeping calling me. And I promised them, but it's a me time. And I know that I will go back home and talk to my daughter about why I was out. And she will feel maybe inspired, and I will share with her what I heard with these 4 wonderful ladies that we heard today. So I just want to share something about the mindset, because we are here for a program, an educational program. And what I lived in Montorel is that we are also here to change the mindset, because as I work in innovation, and innovation is perceived as a luxury, you know, and I work on the mindset for people in the bank where I am. So it's the same thing about diversity. I will not talk about women, but I will talk about diversity, because we cannot talk about only what we can do, but we need these men and they need us. So we should work as a team, just like Manel and her wonderful husband do together. And about shaping mindsets, I would talk about two aspects. The first one is shaping our own mindset to do not have this guilt and to change our self-perception about, to trust ourselves and to change all that the culture shaped and all these injunctions, etc., and that we can dare to do all these things. And the second one is to engage, because, okay, it's wonderful to talk about, women, what they suffer from, etc., but what I liked about this panel is that we are action-oriented. And I think that each of us, just like Ms. Abiola, you talked about the tree, is that we should think about how are we going to engage, which cause are we going to engage in after going out from this cocktail, after going out from the thing. Maybe mentor somebody, maybe have a give back action. And I hope that this program also will inspire these women and also give them the tools and the means to engage into action. And I would also like to say that it was really inspirational for me to see that Ms. Valo Belkacem went out of her comfort zone and engaged into a cause after going out from the political field. So, and finally, I would like to ask you, Hafsat, about what is to be a gangster? Because you're talking about being a gangster. I like it because it sounds like, trendy and, but what is a gangster? It's hacking the system. It's going out from the establishment. So I like it, but I really need to know what is it about, because when I will tell my daughter about you need to be a gangster, I should tell her what it's about, So thank you very much. Thank you.
So to be a gangster, you have to be the embodiment of what you want to see. This is a fairly religious country. You have to believe that God has your back. Have you seen some of those African American kids in the inner city of the U.S. when they're moving? You've seen them, right? They show them in movies. They're going to move like this. Like you own the world. Like, this woman, Maya Angelou, said, you move like you have diamonds meeting at the meeting of your thighs. You just move like power. You just move. Even just merely seeing you move, people will be like, who is she? What is she doing? You are just moving. You are just moving. You are showing them that you are an authority. You are showing them that you are aware that when you were born equal. Nobody will even be talking to you about nonsense because they know they won't even have the courage to be telling you BS. Then they'll talk to you at your level. They'll be like, Zainab, when will you take over this bank? They'll talk to you like power. Because you are power. You are just embodiment of power. They'll talk to you like power. Won't tell you, they say, it's an attitude. When President Barack Obama, when he moves, but even his wife, she even takes it to another level. Yes. So really, when I'm saying gangster, you are great. You have been, as Manal said, you've been created for a purpose. Amandla said, when you are equal, 10% of the economy of Africa, your presence will bring the economy of Africa richer by 10%, over $300 billion. You move like you're aware of that. When your men are talking to you, they know. Even they will be excited. They will be a little bit afraid because, it's new. It's a new experience. They're not used to women move like they know who they are. They're used to move women like mouse are trying to hide. You are not hiding. God did not create you for hiding. He created you for shining. He knows your power. He has endowed you with everything you need to deliver. And when you die, when you meet him, you just go, Master, I'm here. You just nod. You'll be like, yeah, you did good. That's what you want. You want to move like you are aware that God has your back. Not like, oh, can I do... By the time you are moving like, can I do this? You cannot do it. By the time you're like, and actually, you cultivate that. You cultivate it. You should see me. When I'm already training my kids. When we get to the airport for a flight, I tell them the flight number. I say, take charge, get me to the gate. They just start moving. They check the board, then they start moving. They move with authority. What am I doing? I'm trying to get them used to taking charge. Take it. You'll find that you'll go. I've been in the rooms with all these presidents, many. There's nothing that they have you don't have. There's nothing except maybe audacity. So I want you to groom yourself. Grow the audacity. Go for it.
I think that's a perfect ending to the panel conversation. Thank you very much for the panel. Thank you, Naja, for the speech earlier. If you'd like to speak to these individuals, they will be available for you over dinner. Thank you very much.
We have very quick closing remarks. If you can just stick around for 2 more minutes. And then we have the networking dinner.
Yeah. We need you for 2 minutes here. Hi, if we can get you for just 2 minutes, I think we have some real quick remarks for you that lead into our Women's Leadership Program.
Thank you all, everyone. We're going to have a very quick closing remark by Ms. Ghizlan Hamoud, the Professor of Accounting and Finance at Al-Akhawayn University, and Mr. Benoit Aubert, the Director of Academic Affairs at Africa Business School. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fatim Zara. Good evening, everybody. Mr. President, Madam Najat Vallaud-Belkacem. I know that everybody is tired. Therefore, Hafsat, I don't promise to speak like a gangster. I'm going to do my best to be brief. So today, Dr. Benoit and I, as members of the organizing committee of these events, and many others to come, that in which the two universities are collaborating, we are closing this session of that launches the collaboration between the two universities, Al-Akhawayn University from one side and Africa Business School from the other. We are also aiming here to open the several avenues that put this collaboration into motion. Through these avenues, the two universities are aiming to be the catalysts of change and to prepare and promote a promising future for African leaders for a more inclusive world. Today, Al-Akhawayn University and Africa Business School sat behind the wheel that will drive the vehicle of change and the vehicle of impact through what they know how to do best, which are, number one, research. Conduct research on topics related to diversity and inclusion. And I'm happy to announce that both Dr. Wafa El-Garah and myself have already started working on our first baby paper on the diversity in the boardrooms of Africa. Second, exchanges by bringing together a network of diversity and inclusion advocates and experts. Third, trainings that provide knowledge, tools, resources to professionals, academicians, and students alike on diversity and inclusion issues on the continental level and at the global level. Good news, we are also launching today our first training that will take place on March 21st. And I invite here Dr. Benoît. La parole est à toi pour parler un peu plus du programme. Merci. Merci.
Merci Rislan. Et donc je m'inscris dans le mouvement de balance en terminant en langue française donc cette soirée. Effectivement, pour cette soirée qui était un point de départ et qu'on a décidé avec l'université Al-Arawaïn et l'université Mohamed VI de Polytechnique de prolonger à travers la mise en place du programme de formation Women in Leadership. D'ailleurs, on s'est interrogé sur la nature du programme formation, échange, workshop. On pense que c'est surtout un espace, à l'image des différentes discussions qu'il y a eu ce soir, un espace d'échange extrêmement important qui va s'ouvrir. Alors sur un programme de 4 jours qui a été défini avec la volonté effectivement d'avoir on va dire un moment d'échange concentré, interactif, avec des experts, des formateurs, des professeurs, mais surtout eh bien, avec les personnes qui vont participer aux formations. Ce programme, donc, qui démarre le 21 mars et pour 4 journées, en fait, va réunir un nombre relativement faible de personnes. On préfère concentrer un public d'une quinzaine de participants et de renouveler plusieurs fois ce programme, toujours avec l'idée eh bien, de pouvoir créer un réseau d'échanges, de discussions, un réseau de partage. Donc première formation au mois de mars, la deuxième qui est déjà définie au mois de juillet, mais peut-être y en aura-t-il une autre entre ces deux dates. Et puis eh bien, on va discuter, échanger, apprendre sur les questions de leadership, sur les questions de growth mindset et donc de mindset entrepreneurial, sur des choses plus techniques comme les biais de cognition, etc. Et donc à travers cela, eh bien, proposer à chacun des participants, chacune des participantes aussi, eh bien, d'avancer à l'image de toutes les discussions qui ont lieu ce soir. Et le dernier pas que nous ferons ensemble ce soir et auquel je vous invite maintenant pour clôturer cette session, c'est le pas qui nous mène vers le dîner qui vous attend. En vous remerciant, bonne soirée à toutes et à tous.